You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not behind because you lack talent or intelligence. You're exhausted because you've been carrying questions no one taught you how to answer. Why does it feel like everyone else has a plan while you're just reacting to life? Why does money feel like a constant pressure no matter how hard you work? Why do days blur together while months disappear and years slip by? Why do you know you're capable of more, yet somehow stay stuck doing less? At night, when the noise finally stops, these questions get louder. You scroll, you distract yourself. You tell yourself you'll figure it out tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and the same cycle repeats. Bills, expectations, comparison, doubt, a quiet fear that you're wasting something important inside you. No one warned you that confusion can feel heavier than failure. Failure at least feels like movement. Confusion feels like standing still while life keeps moving without you. You try to be responsible. You try to stay positive. You try to do what you're supposed to do. But deep down, there's a tension you can't ignore anymore. Because real fear isn't failing. The real fear is waking up years from now and realizing you never truly chose your life. You just drifted into it. This is where most people stop listening. They tell themselves this is just how adulthood feels. They numb the discomfort. They lower their expectations. They call survival success. But something in you knows better. That quiet discomfort you feel isn't a flaw. It's awareness trying to wake you up. You're not struggling because you aim too high. You're struggling because your daily actions don't yet match what you believe you're meant for. And that gap, that space between who you see yourself becoming and how you're living right now, is the source of the stress, the anxiety, the restlessness. Not the economy, not your past, not your lack of opportunity. It's the inner conflict of knowing more is possible and not yet living in alignment with it. Here's the truth most people never hear clearly. Your life is not controlled by what happens to you. It's shaped by what you consistently think about, accept, and act on. Not once, not when motivation is high, but daily, quietly, repeatedly. Your income, your confidence, your direction. These are not accidents. They are reflections. Reflections of your self-image. Reflections of what you believe is normal for you. Reflections of the standards you tolerate when no one is watching. Most people don't fail because they aim too high. They fail because they never redefine who they believe they are. They try to change results without changing identity. They try to work harder without thinking differently. They chase external fixes for internal patterns, and that never lasts. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you'll unconsciously create struggle, even when opportunity appears. If you see yourself as someone who almost succeeds, you'll stop just short of the finish line every time. If you see yourself as someone who is always catching up, life will keep you running. Your mind always works to prove you right about yourself. That's why discipline feels painful at first, because discipline threatens an old self-image. That's why consistency feels boring, because your ego prefers intensity over repetition. That's why fear shows up when you start taking responsibility, because responsibility means you can no longer blame. But here's the turning point most people miss. The moment you accept full responsibility for your inner world, everything changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but permanently. Because once you realize that your thoughts are habits, and habits can be trained, you stop feeling helpless. You stop waiting for clarity to arrive before you act. You stop waiting for confidence before you move. You stop waiting for permission to become serious about your life. You understand something simple and powerful. Clarity comes from action. Confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself. Direction comes from deciding, then adjusting along the way. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a clear standard. A standard for how you think. A standard for how you speak to yourself. A standard for how you show up, especially when no one applauds. Your future isn't built in moments of inspiration. It's built in moments of resistance. When you'd rather quit, but don't. When you'd rather scroll, but choose to focus. When you'd rather delay, but take the next small step anyway. This is where real power comes from. Not loud confidence, not motivational highs, but quiet alignment. Alignment between what you say you want and what you do when it's uncomfortable. Most people overestimate what they can change in a week and underestimate what consistency can do in a year. They chase breakthroughs instead of building foundations. They want results without routines. They want transformation without repetition. But life doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall or rise to the level of your daily thinking. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are reinforcing an identity. Every excuse reinforces one identity. Every disciplined action reinforces another. You don't become confident by thinking about confidence. You become confident by doing things that a confident person would do, especially when fear is present. Fear doesn't disappear when you're on the right path. It just stops being in. Control. Most people wait for fear to leave before they act. Successful people act while fear is still in the room. They don't see fear as a stop sign. They see it as a signal that growth is happening. Your mind is designed to protect the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. That's why growth feels threatening. That's why change feels uncomfortable. That's why old habits fight back when you try to replace them. But discomfort is not danger. It's a sign you're upgrading your identity. The version of you that created your current life cannot create your next level. That doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means you're ready to evolve. And evolution doesn't happen through motivation. It happens through decision, a calm, firm decision about who you are becoming. Not someday, not when conditions improve. Now, you decide that your thoughts matter. You decide that your words matter. You decide that your time matters. You decide that showing up consistently is more important than feeling inspired, because inspiration is unreliable, but standards are stable. You don't need to overhaul your life tonight. You need to stop lying to yourself about what you're willing to tolerate. Tolerate distraction, and distraction becomes your lifestyle. Tolerate excuses, and excuses become your identity. Tolerate inconsistency, and inconsistency becomes your future. But when you raise your standards, even slightly, everything begins to shift. You start doing small things with intention. You finish what you start. You stop negotiating with your lowest impulses. Not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency compounds. Most people think success is loud. It's not. Success is quiet. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's doing the same simple things long after the excitement fades. It's choosing long-term self-respect over short-term comfort. And here's something important. You don't need to believe you'll succeed. You just need to believe that your actions matter. Belief grows after evidence, not before. Every time you do what you said you would do, you deposit evidence into your identity. Over time, that evidence becomes confidence. That confidence becomes clarity. That clarity becomes momentum. And momentum changes everything. Your finances improve not because luck appears, but because your thinking becomes more disciplined. Your direction sharpens not because someone saves you, but because you start choosing intentionally. Your fear weakens not because it vanishes, but because you stop obeying it. This is how lives change. Not through dramatic moments, but through quiet commitments. At some point, you realize no one is coming to rescue you. And instead of feeling afraid, you feel free. Free to build, free to focus, free to become someone you respect. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I never fully try? That question changes everything, because the cost of regret is heavier than the cost of effort. You don't need to compare your path to anyone else's. Comparison only steals energy from the work that matters. Your only real competition is yesterday's version of you. Show up a little more disciplined than yesterday. Think a little more clearly than yesterday. Act a little more intentionally than yesterday. That's enough. The future doesn't require perfection. It requires commitment. And commitment isn't emotional. It's practical. It's choosing sleep over late-night distraction. It's choosing learning over numbing. It's choosing patience over panic. It's choosing to build something slowly, on purpose. The person you are becoming is shaped in moments no one will ever see. And one day, people will call it luck. But you'll know the truth. You'll know it was nights like this, moments like this. A decision made quietly without applause. A decision to think differently, to act differently, to live with intention. Not because it was easy, but because staying the same finally became harder. And that's when everything begins. And once that decision is made, quietly, honestly, something subtle begins to happen inside you. Nothing flashy, no fireworks, just a shift. You start noticing your thoughts instead of being dragged by them. You notice how often your mind tries to rush ahead, worrying about outcomes you can't control. You notice how often it pulls you backward, replaying moments you can't change. And you begin to see how little time it spends where real power exists. Right now, Most people live mentally exhausted lives, not because their days are too hard, but because their minds are never still. They're always negotiating, always justifying, always explaining. Explaining why now isn't the right time. Explaining why they'll start once things calm down. Explaining why someone else had it easier. That mental noise drains more energy than hard work ever could. The disciplined mind is not a loud mind. It's a clear one. Clarity doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from asking better questions. Instead of asking, why is this so hard? You ask, what part of this can I control? Instead of asking, what if I fail? You ask, what is the next small action I can take? Instead of asking, am I good enough? You ask, am I showing up with integrity today? Those questions don't overwhelm you. They anchor you. And when your mind is anchored, your actions become calmer, more deliberate, more effective. Here's something few people ever realize. Your self-image is always speaking, even when you're not aware of it. It speaks through your habits, through your posture, through how quickly you quit when things get uncomfortable, through how seriously you take your own goals. You don't rise to what you want. You default to who you believe you are. If you believe you're someone who struggles with money, you'll subconsciously make choices that confirm it. If you believe you're someone who never finishes, you'll stop just before completion feels possible. If you believe you're someone who needs motivation to act, you'll stay dependent on moods. This isn't because you're weak. It's because your mind seeks consistency. It wants your outer life to match your inner story. And until you rewrite that story, no strategy will save you. Rewriting, it doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means choosing a more honest narrative. Instead of I'm stuck, you say, I'm in a building phase. Instead of I don't know what I'm doing, you say, I'm learning through action. Instead of I always mess this up, you say, I'm becoming more disciplined. Words matter because repetition matters. You don't become what you say once. You become what you repeat. That's why consistency is so powerful and so rare. Most people want change, but they don't want the boredom that comes with it. They want progress to feel exciting. They want discipline to feel rewarding immediately. They want growth to feel validating. But real growth often feels quiet, lonely, unnoticed. And that's where most people quit. Not because it's too hard, but because it's not dramatic enough. They mistake calm progress for stagnation. But calm progress is exactly how strong foundations are built. Think about it. Anything that grows too fast without structure eventually collapses. Careers, finances, confidence, even relationships with yourself. When you slow down and commit to doing things properly, something stabilizes inside you. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop measuring your worth by short-term outcomes. You start trusting process over emotion. And trust is built the same way confidence is built, through kept promises. Small promises, daily promises, promises like, I'll do the work even when I don't feel like it. I'll finish what I start today. I'll show up with focus for the next hour. Not heroic promises, practical ones, because discipline isn't about intensity, it's about reliability. You don't need to be extreme, you need to be dependable to yourself. When you become someone you can rely on, anxiety decreases. Why? Because anxiety often comes from self-betrayal. From saying you'll do something and not doing it, from knowing what matters and avoiding it, from wanting change, and choosing comfort instead. Each time that happens, trust in yourself weakens. But each time you follow through, even in small ways, that trust rebuilds. And a person who trusts themselves moves differently through life. They don't panic as easily. They don't seek constant validation. They don't need everything to feel safe before acting. They understand something essential. Uncertainty is not the enemy. Avoidance is. Life will never give you perfect conditions, but it will always respond to committed action. You don't eliminate confusion by thinking longer. You eliminate it by moving forward. Direction is discovered through movement. That's why waiting until you feel ready keeps you stuck. Readiness is not a feeling. It's a decision, and decisions shape identity. Once you decide that you are someone who acts with intention, your behavior starts to align. Slowly, imperfectly, but steadily. You stop asking for guarantees. You stop needing certainty. You start valuing progress. This shift alone changes how you experience failure. Failure stops feeling like proof that something is wrong with you. It starts feeling like information, feedback, course correct, ion, something useful. You no longer collapse emotionally when something doesn't work. You adjust. That emotional stability is not passive. It's trained. It comes from knowing that your worth is not tied to a single outcome. Your worth is tied to your commitment to growth. That commitment becomes your anchor. And when financial stress shows up, and it will, you respond differently. You stop panicking. You stop avoiding numbers. You stop hoping problems disappear. You face reality calmly. You plan. You prioritize. You improve your skills. You stop seeing money as a source of fear and start seeing it as a system to understand. No shortcuts, no fantasies, just steady improvement. Financial peace doesn't come from sudden wins. It comes from consistent competence. The same is true with purpose. Purpose isn't something you find. It's something you build by doing meaningful work consistently. You don't wake up one day suddenly knowing your life's direction. You earn clarity by committing to something long enough to grow through it. Most people quit too early, right before depth appears. They mistake early discomfort for misalignment. But discomfort is often a sign that you're shedding an old identity. The part of you that wants immediate results, the part that avoids effort, the part that seeks certainty before commitment. Letting go of that version feels uncomfortable, but holding on to it costs you your future. So you choose differently. You choose to measure success by effort, not outcome. You choose to respect time instead of wasting it. You choose to build skill instead of chasing attention. And slowly, almost without noticing, you change. Your posture changes. Your speech changes. Your tolerance for distraction decreases. You start valuing quiet mornings, focused hours, intentional rest. You become less reactive, less rushed, less desperate. Because desperation comes from feeling out of control. And control doesn't mean controlling life. It means controlling your response to it. This is real power. Not dominance, not aggression, but self-mastery. The ability to choose your actions regardless of mood. The ability to delay gratification without resentment. The ability to stay consistent when no one is watching. That kind of power is built privately. And once you have it, the outside world starts to respond differently. Opportunities appear, not magically, but logically. People trust you more. You trust yourself more. Momentum builds. And momentum doesn't shout. It hums. It feels steady, reliable. You still have doubts. You still feel tired sometimes. But you no longer feel lost. Because being lost isn't about not knowing the destination. It's about not moving at all. Now you're moving with intention, with discipline, with a clearer self-image. And that's enough to change everything, one day at a time. As momentum builds, a new challenge quietly appears. Not external resistance, internal negotiation. This is where Chapter 2 truly begins. Because once you start moving forward, your old patterns don't disappear. They test you. They whisper things like, slow down. You've done enough for today. You deserve a break. Missing one day won't matter. And once again, this isn't because you're weak. It's because your mind is adjusting to a higher standard. Growth always creates friction. Most people think the hardest part is starting. It's not. The hardest part is continuing, when the novelty fades and results are still invisible. This is where consistency stops being an idea and becomes a character trait. At this stage, motivation is unreliable. Emotion fluctuates, energy dips, and that's exactly why this stage matters. Because now, your progress depends less on how you feel and more on who you've decided to be. You begin to understand something critical. Your feelings are not commands. They are signals. Signals that can be acknowledged without being obeyed. The disciplined person doesn't suppress emotion. They simply refuse to let emotion run the schedule. They understand that feelings change, but commitments hold. This is where many people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They wait to feel aligned. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel ready again. But alignment is created through action. Inspiration follows effort. Readiness grows through repetition. If you only act when conditions are perfect, you'll live a life of almosts. Almost consistent, almost confident, almost fulfilled. And almost is a quiet form of regret. The truth is, discipline is not about forcing yourself. It's about simplifying decisions. When you remove negotiation, energy is freed. You don't ask, should I do this today? You ask, when am I doing this today? That shift alone eliminates exhaustion. Decision fatigue is one of the most underestimated drains on modern life. Too many options, too much input, too little intention. So the disciplined mind reduces friction. Same wake-up time, same work window, same daily priorities. Not because life should be rigid, but because structure creates freedom. When your essentials are non-negotiable, everything else becomes lighter. You stop wasting energy deciding, you invest it in doing, and slowly something changes in how you see yourself. You no longer identify as someone trying to improve. You start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. That identity shift is subtle but powerful, because once your identity changes, effort feels different. It's no longer a battle against yourself. It's an expression of who you are. You don't go to the gym because you're forcing discipline. You go because that's what you do now. You don't manage your money because you're scared. You do it because you respect your future. You don't learn new skills because you're desperate. You do it because growth is part of your standard. Standards remove drama from progress, and drama is what keeps most people stuck. They attach emotion to every outcome. They personalize every setback. They interpret every delay as a sign. But disciplined thinking is neutral. It sees events clearly. This worked, this didn't just. No identity crisis, no overreaction. That calm response to life is not natural. It's trained, and training requires repetition under imperfect conditions. This is where patience becomes essential. Not passive patience, active patience. The patience to keep doing the right thing without immediate reward. Modern life makes this difficult. Everything around you is designed for speed, instant feedback, instant entertainment, instant validation. But nothing meaningful compounds instantly. Confidence compounds, skill compounds, wealth compounds, self-respect compounds, and compounding requires time under consistency. This is where long-term thinking becomes a survival skill. You stop asking, what do I want right now? You start asking, what will I thank myself for later? That question changes decisions. It changes how you spend evenings. It changes how you react to stress. It changes how you choose comfort. You begin to see comfort differently. Comfort is not rest. Comfort is avoidance. Rest is intentional. Comfort is unconscious. The disciplined person rests without guilt and works without resentment. They don't swing between extremes. They don't burn out and disappear. They pace themselves. And pacing requires honesty. Honesty about your capacity. Honesty about your distractions. Honesty about what actually moves the needle. Most people overcomplicate improvement. They chase systems instead of fundamentals. They consume advice instead of applying it. They plan endlessly to avoid discomfort. But progress is simple, not easy, but simple. Do the essential work. Remove obvious distractions. Repeat. If something doesn't work, don't dramatize it. Refine it. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to build a life you respect. And respect comes from alignment. Alignment between values and actions. When those match, peace increases, even before success arrives. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer, responding instead of reacting. That internal stability is worth more than any external win, because external wins without internal stability collapse. This is also where comparison loses its grip, not because you stop noticing others, but because your focus becomes personal. You measure progress against your own standards. Yesterday versus today, last month versus this month. You stop rushing. Rushing is usually fear disguised as ambition. Fear of falling behind, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough. But when you trust your process, urgency softens. You move steadily, and steady movement over time outpaces frantic effort. You begin to realize that success is not about doing more. It's about doing fewer things consistently well. That requires saying no. No to distractions that drain energy. No to commitments that dilute focus. No to environments that normalize stagnation. This isn't arrogance. It's self-respect. You protect your attention because attention shapes identity. What you focus on daily becomes your mental environment, and environment shapes behavior. That's why small changes matter. What you listen to, what you read, who you spend time with, what you allow to interrupt your focus. None of these are neutral. They either support your growth or quietly erode it. The disciplined mind designs its environment intentionally, not perfectly, but deliberately. You don't rely on willpower alone. You reduce temptation. You don't test yourself unnecessarily. You set yourself up to win. That's not weakness, that's intelligence. And intelligence compounds too. Over time, you notice something else. Your emotional reactions soften. Things that once triggered frustration now feel manageable. Problems that once felt overwhelming now feel solvable. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger internally. Strength isn't loud. It's the ability to stay composed when outcomes are uncertain. It's the ability to continue when validation is absent. It's the ability to trust your effort even when results lag. That trust becomes your foundation. And with it comes a deeper form of confidence. Not confidence that everything will work out, but confidence that you'll handle whatever happens. That kind of confidence cannot be shaken by circumstances. It's built from repetition, responsibility, and resilience. This is where you stop needing external motivation, because motivation is borrowed energy. Discipline is owned energy. Owned energy doesn't fluctuate wildly. It's stable. And stability creates space. Space to think, space to PL, and space to grow. You start making decisions from clarity, not panic. And that clarity attracts better outcomes. Not because the world favors you, but because you're finally aligned with reality. You see things as they are. You respond accordingly. You adjust without ego. That's mastery. Not perfection, not dominance, but mastery over self. And once that begins, it doesn't stop. Because you're no longer chasing change. You're living it quietly, consistently, on purpose. And this is where the real journey deepens, beyond discipline, beyond habits, into meaning. But that comes next. For now, you stay here, grounded, focused, committed. Because this chapter, this stage, is where most people turn back. And you don't. You keep going. Not because it's easy, but because it's finally honest.